So I sense a rift in the FGO community forming. On one hand, we have the people that think Lancelot is awesome, and on the other hand, we're gonna have people that don't like that Lancelot literally hit Gareth with the Stomp no Jutsu. I'm sorry if you went about your day not knowing that he did that, but it's pretty brutal in its description of how bad Lancelot did Gareth. But to be fair, if you see some angry dude in some black armor coming to save his wife, and you choose to stand in front of him, I mean, you gotta at least know what you're getting into. I choose to believe she's a brave little knight just trying to do her job, and was at the wrong place at the wrong time. But I know there's people that are gonna be pretty mad that Lancelot stomped no Jutsu Gareth. With that being said, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Gareth and how good she is. If you enjoy FGO content, I upload these videos every single day, and all I ask for in return is a like on the video and a subscribe to the channel. If you're feeling really feisty and you like what I do, you might click that join button and become a channel member. I'm actually thinking about doing some like lore videos for channel members. I've been throwing that idea just a little bit to kind of gauge interest, so maybe I'll do that from channel members, because I mean, I like Fate and I like talking about the lore as well. So you might have that to look forward to if you become a member. But with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about Gareth. And this is probably the servant I was the second most excited for to come in with this batch. Chen Gong, for obvious reasons, was number one, because he allows like just absolute looping mayhem, and you can cycle all of your buffers all over the place. He's just absolutely crazy. But Gareth is one of those servants that's going to help a lot of players out. I think maybe the one flaw she has is that her NP, even as like a quote-unquote free NP5 unit, really doesn't hit all that hard, but it gets the job done. And her style of gameplay is super easy to pick up, especially for some newer players that are going to be starting their game off at the anniversary. So I think this is going to be a very, very solid servant for old and new players, but especially new players that are kind of getting into FGO. They'll get to learn a lot about how the game works by using Gareth. With that being said, let's go ahead and start talking about her hits. Which, I mean, overall, considering like what the other servants had in this batch, her hits are actually pretty solid. The 5 hit on the extra attack is pretty good, especially because she has 71% NP gen. Meaning the only weakness of the extra attack not being able to crit is kinda nulled with this, because 5 hits with 71% NP gen does allow you to gen a decent bit of NP in a Brave Chain. But when you look at her deck, she's clearly tailored to be one of those buster servants that gets a big crit on her arts card and gens a lot of NP. At least, that's what you would think upon initially looking at her. It's actually a bit more nefarious than that, and we'll get into that when we start getting into her skills. But if you do get a crit on her arts card, 71% NP gen with 3 hits means you can gen a ton of NP back. Again, we'll get into her skills that are really going to help her out with the NP gen. But I don't want to overlook the quick cards either, because she has 4 hits on 2 quick cards with 12% star gen. That's not actually all that bad, especially because she has a passive 8% quick card performance buff with riding. You're actually going to be able to gen, I mean, a decent bit of NP back with those quick cards. Not a whole lot, but a decent bit. It should be noticeable. But more importantly, you can actually drop a few stars for Gareth to play around with. But enough foreplay, let's move into the skills, because that's where Gareth really starts to shine. Now, unfortunately, her first skill right now is just a Guts. It lasts for 3 turns, revives her with 1500 HP on a 7-turn cooldown. Not terrible, but not the best skill known to man. However, she does get a strengthening quest, albeit about 2 years down the line when Lost Belt 6 releases, but this makes this skill very powerful, because it buffs that revival up to a 3k revival, so she's getting like double the HP when she revives. But then she's also getting 50% crit damage and dropping 20 stars for her to play around with. So they buffed up her star gen a bit by giving her 20 stars automatically. And then they actually gave her a pretty decent crit buff to make use of all of those crit stars, because she didn't have that initially. So right now, unfortunately on NA, it's just going to be a Guts, but later on down the line, this skill actually will be very powerful, and it does kind of complete Gareth's kit. However, for now, it's really going to be the second and third skill that kind of make Gareth's whole thing work, because the second skill is giving her a 20% battery, and then giving her a buff that whenever she gets hit, she gets a 20% attack buff for 1 time. Now, this does stack. If you get hit 3 times in a turn, you get a 60% attack buff, but you can't spread it out. It's not like it lasts for like 3 turns or anything. You only get 1 really big hit. And so either use this with like a really big buster crit or use this with your NP to do a lot of damage. Now you might be thinking, well, that's going to require some good RNG to make sure that Gareth gets hits a lot, because I don't want to just be stuck with like a 20% attack buff and be doing like inconsistent damage. Well, that's where the third skill comes into play. The third skill is a taunt that lasts for 1 turn. It gives Gareth 40% defense for that turn and buffs her NP gen by 20% for 1 turn as well on a 5-turn cooldown. So basically, what you're supposed to do is you pop the third skill. This draws everybody to Gareth and gives her the defense to tank the attacks, and you also have that guts just in case it's too much. Everybody hits Gareth, they do a lot of damage to her, but she lives, and then she gets a 60% attack buff because of her second skill, and with the battery and the buffed NP gen on top of her already naturally high NP gen, you should get enough NP back to pop your own NP, so then you just blow up your opponent. That's why I was saying it's a bit nefarious, because it's not the usual, oh, just get a crit on the arts card and you'll loop your NP. It's, let's get beat up and gen our NP all in 1 turn. And in that regard, Gareth functions very, very well. And I guess on the note of her NP, let's just talk about that. It is quite worth getting her NP. It has built-in Pierce invincibility, and it reduces enemies' defense by 10 to 30% for 3 turns, you know, depending on overcharge. If you're able to get a subsequent NP going, which, I mean, you might be able to, if you're lucky, your second NP will then hit just a bit harder because of the reduction in defense. But do keep in mind that that taunt only lasts for 1 turn. So if you pop that taunt and you're able to get a big first NP, keep in mind you might want somebody else like, you know, Chen Dinglenuts over there to put the taunt back on Gareth so she can refund her NP again. Although, unfortunately, the NP gain only lasts for 1 turn. I think that's a bit of an L for Gareth. Considering it's only 20%, you know, they could have had that last 3 turns to make subsequent NPs easier to get. But overall, you can see how she has a very simplistic style of gameplay, like she just wants to get beat up to then fire her NP and then kill whatever's in front of her. And then to make the most out of that gameplay, they gave her the Pierce invincibility so you don't just waste all this setup to then have the enemy just dodge around your NP. It's like, no, you're gonna get hit by this NP. That's also why you probably saw a lot of people on the JP server before these servants came to NA grail their Gareths. Because really, her only weakness is that she has the lowest single target Lancer NP damage in the game. I mean, that is kind of off the merit that she's only a 2-star. So being able to put grails into her, which I know a lot of you people are already doing, because there's been tons of people in the comments being like, talk about Gareth, tell me that my grails were justified. And yes, they are justified because grailing Gareth gives her that one thing that she lacks, and that's that extra bit of damage. Not that she necessarily needs it, and you'll notice that's kind of a trend for all of these bronze servants that we're talking about. None of them really need the grails to be good, but they're set up in a way that if you grail them, you get so much more mileage out of them, and they perform so much better. So obviously, I'm going to tell you to go head over to the friend point gacha, waste your time and a little bit of your sanity to make sure you get NP5 Gareth. Because especially when she gets her buff with Lost Belt 6, she's going to be so absolutely crazy, especially if you decide to put grails into her. And keep in mind, if you want to put grails into these bronze servants, you don't have to go all the way. You don't have to bring them all the way to 100. Because until you get to level 90, a grail gives you 5 levels. So like, say you put 3 grails into Gareth, she then goes up to level 80 on like the same level as like a 4-star. So if you just want to put a little bit of grails into her to kind of give her that little bit of stat buff, you can go ahead and do that, and it'll be well worth your investment. Because you'll not only get extra damage because her attack is higher, but her HP will go up, and as like this kind of tanky servant that wants to get hit a lot, she's going to need extra HP. But also keep in mind, you don't have to grail Gareth, you can use her just fine as a 2-star, she'll just obliterate everything just fine. I don't want anybody feeling pressured into using their grails because at the end of the day, grail the servants you like. Go for that over gameplay 100 times out of 100 because then you'll have so much more enjoyability with the game. So with that being said, let me know what you guys think about Gareth in the comments down below. Do you agree? Do you think she's amazing? Like, I think she's pretty good. Even kind of debating just putting a few grails into her because I think her gameplay style is pretty fun. Let me know all that in the comments down below. There's links down in the description. Like the video, subscribe, all that good stuff. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day. Peace. Late, guys.